my 17-year-old daughter this summer, we were traveling all over the place with, of course, your guy Ruben and his little basketball club that he's so gracious to volunteer in the community and be a part of. We're so thankful for that. But I was in and out of airports and cities all over the country with her and working on the go like most of us parents have to do. And I said, well, you need to help me start planning something neat this year for October for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And she looked at me and she said, how about we change the name? People are aware of domestic violence. They know it's there. How about we change it to Domestic Violence, Let's Freaking Do Something About It Month? So, well, out of the mouths of teenagers, unfortunately, it's just not that easy. An awareness month is just really a time for us to, hopefully with media partners like you, get the word out of what resources are that are in the area, tragedies that happen every single day, not just in Arkansas or our region or in the United States, but in the world, pertaining to domestic violence. Every single one of them is a catastrophe. Whether there's a loss of life or not, it's a catastrophe that someone's going through what they're going through. But tragedies like we experienced here in the River Valley this weekend, unfortunately, bring it very close to us. It's in our neighborhoods. It's people that we go to church with. We see at Walmart. We see at the dollar stores, whatever grocery stores, wherever you shop. Your children might be sitting with those kids in a classroom at school. So it really hits tenderly a little bit more when it is someone in your community, whether you had a personal relationship with them or not. It reminds us how real and how dangerous even a single incident is, but multiple instances that when it goes on and on and on over months or years in the cycle of violence, unfortunately, it is not uncommon for it to end in homicide.
Let's talk about that for a second, because someone on the outside who may not be experiencing this seems to offer up advice. Just leave, just get away from that. Why are you still there? You and I have talked about this so many times in the past that it's just not that simple.
No, there's multiple reasons. There is actually scientific studies on the neurobiology of trauma. We know what a broken bone does and how it heals. We know what stitches do on a cut and how they heal. The brain goes through the same traumas that any other part of the body goes through and has to heal or goes into defense mode to figure out how to deal with things. So when you're in the cycle of violence and you've experienced a single tragedy or multiple tragedies, your brain does not process the next steps very well. So there's that piece of it. Then there's also the barriers of children are involved, and I don't know if I have anywhere to go with them. I don't want to pull them out of school. He's just gonna, or she is just gonna find me anyway. I don't have a job. I don't have any money. Where am I gonna live? The only car we own is in his name. If I leave, they're gonna, try to get me arrested for stealing a car. There's so many reasons why people don't leave. And all those barriers at that point in time that mind is in that incident are very real. Those are valid feelings. But what we have to get across to the victims going through these tragedies is we can help you get over those barriers and stay on the other side of them. That is the key, is learning how to stay on the other side of the barriers. It is not uncommon for victims to leave and go back 7 or 8 times. It happens all the time. We see multiple people coming back. Well, things were great for a while. In the cycle of violence, that's actually called the honeymoon phase. And it happens over and over and over again. And they think, oh, this time's going to be better. And then they're right back into that cycle, and they can still reach out for help. Everyone knows someone who's been impacted by domestic violence, even if you don't know you know them.
And that's where you have to step up. Maybe you're reluctant to step in or at least help out. Isn't that where the Crisis Intervention Center comes to play?
It is. So something so unique about victim services is they are completely confidential. People can come to us for help. They do not have to talk to law enforcement if they don't want to. They don't have to press charges. we by federal law cannot disclose their location. We can never confirm or deny that we've ever provided services to anyone without a written release of information from that specific victim. Now, the only time we can get around that on a hotline call is if they tell us they're going to harm themselves or harm others, or if there's reportable child abuse, because we are mandated reporters, which that's very important, because sometimes the adult inside the home in the violent situation is responsible for taking care of the minors, but their mind is stuck in the cycle of violence and they can't get themselves out. So then the children are in that situation as well. So those are reportable crimes. And unfortunately, we do have to do that sometimes and report that, which can later down the road lead to a strained relationship between us and an adult victim if they know that we called law enforcement. But that is something that we're willing to take the chance on to remove those children from that situation. There are hundreds and hundreds of services all across the River Valley and Northwest Arkansas available for victims of all crimes. And even if we can't help victims at the Crisis Intervention Center, we are the information and referral station, so we can get them to the place they need to be.
And I know the center there, you work a lot with kids. You have rooms set up inside the center there that really deal nothing but with kids.
Yeah, we were the only domestic violence shelter in the state of Arkansas that had a DHS licensed Better Beginnings program on site. Unfortunately, with the VOCA cuts this past summer and early fall, that program took a big hit. So we're still providing those services to children inside the shelter. But in the past, it was open up to the community and essential employees, our employees, and the foster care program in our county. So foster families that needed a place for children to go for daycare services could use our program. We're working diligently to try to get the funding back to open that program back up to the community. But when a child is in shelter and it's their home, it's imperative for us to not only be able to provide childcare, daytime services, but we have trauma therapists who come in, speech therapists, physical therapists, occupational therapists. We work so closely with the Fort Smith Public Schools and Dr. Biggs and Jeannie Carroll and the Parents as Teachers program to make sure that these children that are in the program have the needs in the shelter that they have. And when they leave shelter and they're going to be going to Fort Smith Public Schools, to make sure that there's a plan already in place to deal with them, just to try to get some normalcy in their life and get them in a pattern of behavior that they probably haven't been exposed to if they've been stuck in a cycle of violence.
I want to go back for a second about the issue of leaving an abusive situation. And you mentioned quite a few things that will keep someone from leaving a situation. You and I have also talked about this a number of times over the years as well, that there is still a stigma attached to all of this, is there not?
There is. There is no social pattern that domestic violence follows. It can be a family of socioeconomic wealth, any gender, any age, any color, any ethnic group. It does not discriminate. I wish the rest of the world operated that way, like domestic violence does on non-discrimination, but it is so broad across the spectrum. It is very similar when you're in the cycle to the cycle of poverty. It's very hard to get out of because people don't want to be deemed a victim of anything. A few years ago, one of the very large car crashes on the I-40 bridge, I was car number 3. And I've, for several months, even to this day, when I cross the bridge from Franklin County into Fort Smith every day, my knuckles are white coming across that bridge. Because my brain, I'm still in that neurobiological trauma period inside that brain. It is triggered immediately when I get in that same spot. These are what those victims are dealing with every day, and no one wants to be inside that kind of pattern. So you almost go into a denial period that, you know, if I don't talk about it, it's not going to matter. Who's going to help me? I don't want people to know. I don't want to be looked at as that person. I don't want my kids to be those kids. We don't need it. We'll figure it out on their own. So society, unfortunately, sometimes thinks about them as, oh, those poor, pitiful people, instead of, hey, what can we do to help?
Exactly.
What can we do to help those people? And there's so many ways to help, and it's not even always about money. There's so many volunteer opportunities. You can come mow grass and keep me from having to bring somebody to mow grass. You can bring food. You can provide a meal. You can bring, hygiene products to the shelter. You can come read books to kids. Come do a craft night. If you're part of a social group or a church group that's looking for community volunteer opportunities, and it's not just my program. I'm very partial to my program, but I'm also very partial to all the United Way programs with my history
Right.
there. They all have unique volunteer opportunities. And sometimes the stories that volunteers go out and tell in the community about what they experienced at these nonprofits is just as important as the recipient telling their
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. All right.
So
One last thing.
it's a really good way to share love.
Yeah. One last thing real quick, how to get in contact with the Crisis Intervention Center.
Absolutely. So if you are in need of any emergency medical or emergency law enforcement services, please call 911 immediately.
Right.
If you want to talk confidentially to a hotline advocate, we are domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, family violence, stalking, and a suicide hotline. It is 1-800-359-0056. We have multiple language translations available there as well. Or in the daytime, if you just want to talk to a case manager or schedule an appointment, it is 479-782-1821.
All right. Penny Burns, Director of the Crisis Intervention Center in Fort Smith, as always, so insightful. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you guys for being a great partner.